Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. On Thursday, President Biden made his seventh visit to North Carolina since taking office. He was here to tout his administration's investment in infrastructure and economic development. The visit comes as the 2024 presidential election takes shape and as Republicans hit Biden on the economy. WRAL News reporter Brian Murphy has been covering the visit, and he joins us now. Brian, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
First, the news. Biden came to Raleigh. Where was he, and what did he announce?
He was at the Abbott Creek Community Center, and he announced $82 million in broadband investment to bring more reliable and affordable internet to North Carolinians.
And he put that in the context of his broader economic strategy, right?
Right. He talked a lot about infrastructure. He talked about the Raleigh to Richmond rail line. He talked about some bridges out on the Outer Banks. He talked about just some of the manufacturing gains that have been had during his administration. I think the number that he used was $11 billion in investment in North Carolina under his administration.
So why did he pick Raleigh for this announcement?
Well, North Carolina has struggled with broadband availability. I mean, there are parts of the state that still are not as connected to the internet as administration officials would like. And as he said, the internet is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity for people to work and to go to school and to keep in touch with family members. He even mentioned, being able to view church services on the internet. But let's be honest, Raleigh and North Carolina is also going to play a major role in the 2024 election. It is certainly not necessary for Biden to win the presidency to win North Carolina, but it does present another path in case one of his other paths to 270 electoral votes gets blocked.
Now, this was technically an official presidential visit, but it felt like a little bit more than that. I think you just alluded to why.
Yeah, I mean, it was not very long. It was 20 minutes, a 20-minute speech. Biden also stopped at Cookout, which is a great move by the president. He also made an unscheduled or unannounced, at least, stop at a home in the Raleigh area. But yeah, during those 20 minutes, it was contrast with Republicans. He mentioned how many Republicans voted against some of these infrastructure bills that are now allowing the administration to expand broadband or to, build some of these railways or build some of these bridges. And so he certainly contrasted his record with Republicans, and that's not to be unexpected in an election year.
Do you think we'll see more visits like this?
No doubt. I mean, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Charlotte last week. Biden was here this week. I think the Deputy Agriculture Secretary was in town. As I said, North Carolina is not, the first plan A, but I certainly think it's part of plan B for the president to win re-election.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about the GOP's strategy in North Carolina going into the 2024 election. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL News reporter Brian Murphy about North Carolina's role in the upcoming presidential election. Brian, before the break, you mentioned that Biden was here to highlight his work on the economy, but Republicans are also using the economy against him. How's that playing out?
If you look at polling, it's very mixed. Americans have a very mixed view of the economy. They're very optimistic about their possibility of getting a job. The stock market is hitting record highs. But on the other hand, inflation is persistent and prices are higher than most Americans would like, and certainly the president would like. He tried to strike that tone during today's speech when he said, prices are higher, but we're working on it. He mentioned that America, among developed economies in the world, has the best growth and the lowest rate of inflation. But that's not going to stop Republicans from hammering him over prices. I mean, we've seen it in statement after statement from the chairman of the Republican Party here, Michael Whatley, to House Speaker Tim Moore, to the National Committee. I mean, they're just talking about Bidenomics and the rising prices and how Americans can't afford another 4 years of President Biden. So I think how Americans feel about the economy, whether there are prospects for jobs, and unemployment is very low, whether the prospect for jobs and wage growth outweighs what the inflation is going to be a key to the election.
Now, former President Donald Trump ran away with the Iowa caucus, and he seems like the clear frontrunner for the GOP at this point. That sets up a potential rematch of the 2020 election. How do you expect them to compare and contrast their economic records?
Well, I think Biden previewed a little bit of that today during his speech. He talked about how Trump cut taxes for the wealthiest Americans, and that he would not do that. That Biden has not done that. In fact, he believes in he doesn't believe in trickle down economics. That was a big talking point for Biden in his speech today. I think Trump will talk about record unemployment when he was president and how he had the economy humming. I mean, he certainly has the problem of COVID and the economy crashing, and how much does the electorate hold him accountable for that, I think will be a big key. Biden will also talk about unemployment. I think Trump will talk about inflation. Biden. One interesting thing is that Trump put in these tariffs against China. It was a big issue at the time. Biden has not gotten rid of those tariffs. Many of those tariffs are still in place, and so there is some economic agreement on sort of protectionism of the American worker. They come at it from very different sides. Biden comes at it from this protect union jobs built in America. Trump kind of comes at it as targeting China for what he sees are unfair practices by the Chinese, but they've ended up in the same place on that. And so while they have very different economic, outlooks and they will have different economic records, there is some points of agreement between the two candidates.
Now, a Democratic presidential candidate has not won North Carolina since 2008. What are Democrats doing other than visits from Biden and his administration to make sure that they win in 2024?
Yeah, it's a great question. Trump carried the state in his successful presidential bid in 2016. He carried it in his 2020 loss to Biden. If you look at the numbers, it's very close. Trump won the state by less than 75,000 votes, and Governor Cooper, a Democrat, was able to win in the same times that Trump was able to win. So it's possible for a Democrat to win statewide. I think that's one of the reasons you saw Biden here. One, they're going to flood the zone with visits. Two, he laid out, hey, this is what I'm directly doing for North Carolinians. I've gotten, internet access for 800,000 North Carolinians. We've invested $11 billion. Raleigh to Richmond's going to cut down your time on the train. The bridges that the administration is funding and building are going to help, trade and travel on the Outer Banks. I think the other thing is, and we didn't see a lot of this today, but I think we may hear a lot about abortion and as an issue that may be able to move enough suburban women in the state to flip that. We're only talking about 75,000 votes. I think that's one of the things that the Democrats are going to tie some of their fortunes to. I think another thing to look at is Trump and Mark Robinson, the lieutenant governor, may be the top of the ticket here. And talked to Michael Bitzer, a professor at Catawba College, earlier this week. And he talked about the value of negative partisanship. A lot of voters may not be enthusiastic about voting for Biden again, but they are very enthusiastic about not voting for Donald Trump and Mark Robinson. And maybe Democrats can tap into that to help change their fortunes in the presidential election.
Now, you also spoke with an economist. What did he say about Biden's approach here?
Yeah, I talked to Michael Walden. He's a economics professor emeritus at NC State University. And he is the one who brought up that tariffs point to me, that some of their record on the economy is not all that different. But what he said is he thinks that the Biden administration may be talking about inflation or prices in the wrong way, that they need to acknowledge, hey, prices are higher than we want them to be, but they're coming down, or at least slowing the rate of inflation. Prices are not coming down, and they probably won't ever come down. That's not what the economic policy of the United States is. But you want to slow the rate of growth of those prices, and that's the prices on everyday items like eggs and milk and gasoline. Obviously, gas prices have dropped dramatically. And so he thought that Biden should take the approach of, hey, I understand, I recognize that prices are higher than you want them to be, but here's what I'm doing to help moderate that. And Biden, perhaps, I don't think he read our story, but took that advice almost verbatim in his speech today. He said, hey, prices are higher, but we have the lowest rate of inflation in the developed world. Here's how these policies are helping. He gave that. And that's one thing the president is good at, is he can empathize with sort of middle class people. He told the story about how trickle down economics didn't work for his family, and how he had a crowded house growing up, and while they didn't necessarily need anything, there wasn't a whole lot extra left over when the monthly bills were paid. And so I think that is something that the president can do and sort of show that, hey, I'm aware that prices are higher than we want them to be, but here's what I'm doing.
Governor Roy Cooper was on hand. He introduced Biden before his speech. Cooper has tended to lay low on national politics, but we've seen a lot of him lately at Biden events. Is there anything to read into there?
Well, he is the chairman of the Democratic Governors Association, and so I would expect him to play a more vocal role in 2024. He's also a lame duck. And so he's a little freer. He doesn't have to face the voters of North Carolina. I think he's a little freer to get involved in some of those partisan battles that maybe he's avoided in the past. And then lastly, he is a lame duck. He doesn't have a job after this. And a Biden administration that serves for the next 4 years could certainly be a landing place for the governor. I've talked to people in the past that have said, yeah, he could fill any number of cabinet roles in a second-term Biden administration. He hasn't really talked a lot about that. He hasn't really talked about his plans after he leaves the governor's mansion. But certainly a Biden reelection would be better, I think, for his job prospects than an incoming Trump administration.
Well, I know that you'll be watching to see how that plays out. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
That's WRAL reporter Brian Murphy. For our full coverage of President Biden's visit, go to the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.